It's 10 a.m. in Atlanta, 6 p.m. in Abu Dhabi. I'm Lynda Kinkade, in for Becky Anderson. Hello and welcome to Connect the World. Good to have you with us. Well, Iraq and Iran are expressing outrage over the latest U.S. airstrikes. The Pentagon claims the strikes targeted facilities along Iraq's border with Syria, used by militia which are backed by Iran. Several militia members were killed, and this is the second time the Biden administration has struck Iranian-backed groups. Iran's foreign ministry warns the strikes could destabilize regional security, saying, and I quote, "Our advice to the new administration is that instead of making crisis and creating problems for people in the region, take corrective actions and let regional people determine their destiny." Well, meantime, Iraq says the strikes violate its national sovereignty. The U.S. is citing the ongoing attacks on U.S. interests for the reason for the strikes. We have CNN's Barbara Starr following this for us from the Pentagon, and senior international correspondent Awa Damon is live for us in Istanbul. Good to have you both with us. I want to start with you first, Barbara. This is the second time we've had an attack like this under the Biden administration. What can you tell us?
Well, one of the reasons this is happening, Lynda, is because the U.S. says that these Iranian-backed militias in this border region are staging attacks using armed drone technology, and they're staging those attacks against U.S. troops. The big worry, of course, is that they're going to wind up killing U.S. troops, and that could become very quickly a wider conflict. So what you had overnight were these airstrikes, 2 on the Syrian side, 1 on the Iraq side, going after these staging areas where the U.S. believes all of this is originating from. The idea is that the U.S. is saying these are precision and defensive and hoping it's a deterrent to these Iranian-backed militias, but that may be a very much a wish rather than something that's going to happen anytime soon. This kind of activity, these kinds of militia stage attacks have been going on for years, and it's been very tough for the Iraqi government to be strong enough to push these militias out. Lynda?
Yeah, it certainly is. Barbara, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, but I want to go to Awa first on the reaction in the region. Awa, if you can just explain to us what you're hearing from Iraq and Iran.
Well, at this stage, basically what the Iranians are saying is that this is an effort, an attack that was going to be quite detrimental to stability in the region. But it is perhaps what's happening and what we're hearing from Iraq that is more significant at this stage. You have a number of senior Iraqi officials who are saying that this is a violation of their own sovereignty. To reference what Barbara was saying about the strength of the Iraqi government, it's not just an issue of the Iraqi government not being able to sort of rein in these various different Iranian-backed Iraqi Shia militias. It's also an issue with the Iraqi military. The reason why these militias were able to reemerge and become so powerful is because when the U.S. Withdrew from Iraq years ago, the Iraqi security forces, despite what Americans were saying at the time, were not fully ready or capable of handling the security situation, which eventually is, of course, what led to the emergence of ISIS. The emergence of ISIS is what then led to these Iranian-backed Shia militia groups to be able to sort of recoalesce, expand, emerge, and become arguably even more powerful than they were when Iraq was being occupied by U.S. forces itself. And so Iraq's fate right now is very much intertwined to the fate of what happens between Iran and the United States. And Iraqis, whether it's Iraqis that you speak to in the street or the vast majority of Iraqis in government, will tell you that Iran and the United States have to stop using Iraq as their background for these back and forth, strikes on the one hand, airstrikes in retaliation, ongoing tensions between these two countries, because Iraq itself can't sustain this. Iraq will not be able to survive as a stable nation as long as these two countries, America and Iran, keep going at each other within Iraqi territory.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to come back to you in just a second. Barbara, I want to get your take on how this is playing out diplomatically, because as we're seeing this proxy war play out, we also know obviously that there's talks underway to revive the Iran nuclear deal.
Well, that certainly does, I think, linger behind much of this as a major issue. Now, Whether it really changes anything with the militias or not would be an open question. But it's one of the reasons the U.S. wants to see these militias under control. Again, they don't want to see the militias stage any kind of attack that would lead to U.S. fatalities, U.S. casualties, that could then draw in the U.S. military in a way that it is not now and could harm any diplomatic progress. The U.S. wants to keep everything pretty stable, and so they're using these strikes that we've seen as another deterrent mechanism. Whether it works remains to be seen.
Yeah, exactly. And to you, Ara, on this, the U.S. Secretary of State met with Israel's new foreign minister. Not surprisingly, as we've heard from Israel in the past, he expressed serious reservations about the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, I mean, Israel historically has not really wanted to see the deal emerge when it first did years ago under the Obama administration, and now most certainly does not want to necessarily see it revive, believing that it may perhaps embolden Iran or actually push Iran towards thinking that it has a bit more of a carte blanche, free rein to sort of expand on its own nuclear capabilities. But that being said, something has to happen. Look, Lynda, there are some analysts who are saying that the reason why we're seeing, this sort of uptick to a certain degree, although this has pretty much been the status quo, in these targets against U.S. interests in Iraq carried out by these Iranian-backed militias is because Iran is feeling the pinch on its economy. It's feeling the pinch of U.S. sanctions, and it wants to hit an American pressure point. And the most convenient U.S. pressure point that it has within its sights is American installations, American interests inside Iraq. But at the same time, that being said, Lynda, there are a few other things to also take into consideration, and that is that Iran is very deeply entrenched in Iraq. And so when it comes to the issue of these Iranian-backed Shia militias, the other big concern is how powerful of a force they actually are. And many will argue that they are more powerful than the Iraqi army itself. And what you most certainly do not want to see emerge as the end scenario in a country like Iraq is what we have in Lebanon, for example, where you have Hezbollah's armed forces who are more powerful than the Lebanese army. And that has never boded well for Lebanon. And so within Iraq, having an armed force that is not under the direct command and control of the Iraqi security forces, that is more powerful than the Iraqi security forces, most certainly is not going to bode well for Iraq's long-term stability or future.
Certainly isn't. And just back to you, Barbara, on how this began. The US claims it carried out these airstrikes after drone attacks. Are we likely to see this tit for tat continue?
Well, I think it's very likely that it will. If these militias keep up with these attacks, we have seen them sporadically over time in terms of a U.S. response, and I don't think there's any reason to think the Biden administration is not going to pursue these targets.
All right, Barbara Stahl for us at the Pentagon, Arwen Damon for us in Istanbul. Good to have you both with us. Thank you.